All right. Okay, so like Tim said, we're going to be doing a demo on spheres tonight. If you don't know me, my name's Tyler. I do wood turning as a full-time job. Spheres are just one thing I've kind of tried out on the side. I don't really sell them. Just fun to practice. I think it's really important to always try new things in wood turning. If you get stuck on one thing all the time, you kind of become complacent a little bit, so you should always try new shapes and new things on the side. So what I like to do, what we kind of talked about before, is I like to add color to wood. So some of these are finished, some are just unfinished with a little color on it. I also do like puzzle boxes, so some of these are a sphere that open up and they're a little box on the inside. And then just the bowl that I made holds them, so kind of this is the one that sits in my house, and I just make random spheres when I'm bored. And so I kind of want to just get right into it, not talk much about spheres, but tonight I'll be showing you basically the bare bones method of how to make a sphere on the lathe. You can get super fancy with it. You can buy expensive jigs to make a perfect sphere, basically something that mounts on the lathe and you can scrape it so it's a perfect sphere or a hemisphere. I'm going to be doing it all by hand and using chucking methods and mounting methods that you don't have to buy anything besides like a chuck or live and drive centers, things that you already have if you're a wood turner. No specific jam chucks or anything, just pieces of wood. And it's also kind of endless what you can do with spheres. It's fun to just start out making them plain, but really diving into how you can enhance the wood and embellish it and color it and maybe texture it. When you're making art, you really only have, I guess it's 4 things. You have line, form, color, and texture. And I think we should kind of try to explore all of them and not focus so much on just one. So let's make some chips. So starting out, I have a piece of maple. This is going to be my sphere, and I'm kind of doing something like that tonight. If we have time, I might make that base as well. We'll see how long it takes me to make a sphere, but it's kind of cool when you add a little like display base for a sphere too. So this piece is about 3 inches by 3 inches, maybe 2 3/4. The width of it is the length is, you want it to be about 1 inch longer than what the width is. So this is about 3.5 inches, maybe 4 inches wide or long. And first thing we have to do is make it round. It's currently square. I should have probably done this before, but I'm going to make a little bit of a mess with this. I like to use a spindle roughing gouge to make things round to square, but tonight I forgot that, so I'll be using a skew. If you don't know what a skew is, it's basically just a flat blade of a cutting tool, and it does a lot of planing rather than scraping, but you can use it in many different ways. So I'm going to be turning at like 1200 RPMs to start out. My tool rest is slightly above center, and I'm going to be working from the middle out of the piece, the middle of the piece out into open air, so it's easier to cut. So this is a planing cut. I'm focusing on the bottom 2/3 of the tool. I'm starting my cut slow and then kind of easing into it as it's established. And the skew is definitely not the ideal tool to use when making a piece squared around. A spindle roughing gouge is much more efficient, but this will do as well. You could also use a bowl gouge. So I'm getting pretty close around here, but I need to make sure I'm completely around. I don't want to have any flat spots. I want to get rid of all those.
If anybody has any question, raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic.
So this is what the benefit of the skew is. Not that I'm trying to get a smooth surface right now, but by planing you can get almost a perfectly smooth finish that can go right into like 220 sandpaper. And you can get that just by finding the right angle and planing through the wood. So I got some tear out over here. There's some different things I wasn't really paying attention to, but so I want this to be pretty much perfectly cylindrical. I want it to be all about the same diameter. I'm a little shorter over here, but that's okay. So I'm going to go into making a sphere now. And so I need some measuring tools to be able to do this. First, I'm going to find the diameter of the piece in the very center, where I want the center of my sphere to be. And so I'm going to find that. So I've got the diameter. And now I'm going to transfer that over to this tool so I can mark that on the piece of wood. And you want to be as precise as you can be here, because your sphere needs to obviously be, in order to be a sphere, it needs to be as wide as it is tall. It has to be exactly a circle. So I'm going to mark those 2 points right there. Where's my pencil? I'm going to hit them with a pencil just so they show up a little better. And then I'm going to find the center of those 2 points after I remove the wood on the side. So I'm going to continue using my skew, and I'm going to switch to a peeling cut, another cut that the skew can do, and I'll turn at about 1700 RPMs. And I'm going to start on the open end of the wood. I don't want to start in the middle and take the whole thing at once. I want to start maybe 1/4 of an inch, and I'm raising the back of the handle as I push into the wood to remove this. And I'm bringing it down not all the way, but close. Okay, I don't want to go all the way up to the line yet. I'm going to switch to the other side. Did you hear a difference there, cutting on this side compared to that side? See how smooth this is? It wants to be cut over there. Over here, we're dealing with, you probably can't see it, but there's more action in the grain over here. There's a little bit of figure, and there was kind of a knot on the end when I started. So when you're using the skew, both planing and peeling, that figure in the grain is going to show up much more on the skew as it would with the spindle roughing gouge. Can more so plow through that without you noticing. Okay, so I'm going to switch to planing here, bring this down a little more. And so now I have about, after I take this down, probably only a 1/16 of an inch more until I get to my lines. So on this final cut, I want to focus on, I'm eyeballing it, but I want my skew to be exactly 90 degrees to my workpiece. So I am cutting directly square into the workpiece. If I'm slightly off, I'll cut into it, and that'll ruin my finish. Not ruin my finish, but it will kind of change the angle of my cut and make it off as a sphere. I want this to be a perfect square right angle. Okay, same over here. I'm going to continue to work this down. This is a V cut, cutting with the long point of the skew, which is the top of it, versus the short point, which is the bottom. So that's kind of reverse of a peeling cut, where you're using the bottom half of it. You're flipping the tool around and peeling, V-cut with the long point. All right, so same thing over here, 90 degrees. Being careful, I don't want to cut into the wood. I want to keep it that same exact length, the entire piece. And you can do all this with a spindle gouge or a bowl gouge or whatever you're most comfortable with. The skew, I find, just helps me make those cuts the best. So on each side now, at the ends, I'm probably like 3/8 of an inch, which is okay. I'm going to continue to work those a little bit down, but for right now, that's as small as I want to go. I don't have a tape measure. That's all right. I don't need one. Yeah. Daryl? So usually a tape measure, you're going to measure the length of your piece here and mark the exact center. I'm just going to eyeball it and see how it goes. Okay. So there's my center mark. I just barely used the tip of the point and made a slight mark. So now I'm gonna use a sphere. Let's see how close I got. So I'm gonna be making the sphere now. This middle piece is my sphere. It's just in cylinder shape right now. Next step is gonna be working the sides down. And this is really the benefit of this. It's kind of an exercise, really, is working on your rolling a bead. The kind of the core values of wood turning. You need to know how to roll a bead, and you need to know how to turn a cove. To get your standard shapes down. So this is really a great exercise, being able to turn a perfect sphere just by eye. We'll go into how I make it a perfect sphere after I roughly do it as close as I can here. Okay, can you guys see what I'm doing up there? Yeah. 1 5/16. Inch and 5/16. Pretty close. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the skew. I'll show how you can do it with a bowl gouge too. But I think the benefit of the skew here is that the natural planing motion with the skew kind of helps you shape the outside of a sphere. It wants to be cut in that direction. As I'm cutting it like this, I'm really just pivoting off of my pinky. How I hold the tool on the tool rest, my pinky is underneath of the skew. When I'm planing this direction, my pinky is underneath the skew, and that kind of acts as a pivot point. So I can, make a perfect sphere in that angle. Again, working on the bottom 2/3 of the skew. So that's how you would do that with a skew. With a bowl gouge, it's pretty simple as well. Not simple, sorry. But you're going to use more so the nose and the bottom, like 1/8 inch of the wing is how I would start the cut. And you're raising the back of the handle as you make your cut down and just trying to round that off as perfectly as you can. But I'm going to switch back to the skew here. Again, my pinky is underneath of it. And I want to be careful when I'm getting back to my center point. I don't want to take much wood off in like the first 3/8 of an inch next to that. I want to focus more on the bottom half of this first. So this is hard maple, it's dry. It's a really good wood. Turning with the skew, you're going to get shavings like this. This is what you want to see. And I'm just taking a little bit off by little bit. Okay, now when I'm at that point, it's kind of deceiving because I still have, 1/2 inch, 3/8 of an inch to go until I'm at the bottom. And that curve needs to be continuous all the way to the bottom of the sphere. So I have to kind of work this down. right here, and still being mindful of that final diameter, or not diameter, final length. I'm going to switch to my narrow parting tool here. I have color on it right now, but I'll take that off. So I can just kind of continue that measurement down just slightly. And this being hard maple, I can get away with going pretty thin on that. So I'm going to take one cut the entire length of the cut. And I'm just focusing on being super consistent through that, taking the same amount off the entire time.
It's like one solid piece of string.
And I'm looking at the horizon of this sphere now. And the horizon, by that I mean looking at the top edge of it rather than looking where I'm cutting. If I'm looking at the top edge, I can really have a good sense of where it's going. But it also can be kind of hard to sense that. The more spheres you do and the more beads that you roll, the better feel you will have for that. So this really is all about practice. And I can see I'm still pretty flat right up here at my center point, so I'm going to do that again. Take one cut through the entire thing. And taking the same amount off through all of it. When I get to the bottom, I'm still on the cut and continuing. When I get down there, it's a little hard. I can't really see what I'm doing using the short point. So if I go, oops, that's a run back. When you have your skew at the wrong angle, it's going to let you know. So it'll cut back, and that was a nice one, but they can be much harder than that. So some people might be scared to go this thin, but I know that that's going to be okay, especially until the end. And the reason I'm starting on the live center side is because this is what's driving it. If I got that thin on the drive center side, there'd be too much torque on that point, and it would likely snap that. So I'm looking pretty good right there. I'm going to switch to the other half. And same thing, but I'm not using my pinky as my anchor point here. I just have a spot on my palm right underneath the bottom of my pinky, and that is now my pivot point. And I'm keeping that very constant, and I'm just more so moving my body and my arms, and I'm cranking it back this direction. And I'm making the same motion each time I do it. At the beginning stages here, I'm focusing on taking a slight cut at first and then really increasing my cut as I go into it, because obviously I need to take a lot more wood off here than I do up here. Okay, so I don't have much room on this side, so I'm going to focus doing more on the long point when I get down to where I'm at here. But I'm going to take one more cut from the top to the bottom. I'm also hearing a little bit of vibration here because of those thin points that I've got. Okay. It's good to stop the lathe and look at it every now and then, make sure, and kind of analyze where I'm at. So I'm liking this side. Use a pencil that shows you kind of the areas you have to look at. Right here, I would say, is still too proud, and then obviously down here I need to taper that into itself. Does anyone have any questions right now? Oh, okay. Pencil also helps because it's going to show me where I'm removing wood now. Yeah. I'm at the point now where as I'm cutting, I'm only looking at the top horizon. So I've been playing with the short point here and doing V cuts with the long point. I'm going to switch to doing a full cut with the long point so I have more kind of access. I was kind of running out of room and getting tight, and my visibility wasn't very good doing it like this. So I'm going to switch over here and focus on the bottom of it. Okay, so looking at the shape, now it kind of looks like it's coming to a point right here. So I think I'm pretty good at the top, but I need to continue my final dimension with the narrow parting tool. Be careful on that. I'm going to lower my tool rest a little bit, and I'm going to continue with the V-cut. Okay, one last evaluation. And I think now looking back at it after I fixed that, I want to take just a slight amount off from the top. And I'm going to see some vibration here because I don't have much holding that on. And to alleviate the vibration, I'm just going very slow. I'm focusing on more bevel pressure. and
Hey,
less-
Tyler.
Yeah.
When you're doing that, if you made your piece a little bit longer and put it in a chuck
Yeah.
and did the same thing, like so you could finish the tail side off and then the
Definitely
last
a way
thing you
to
do
do
is
it.
finish off.
Yeah.
Is that how you usually do it?
No, I usually do it this way, but that's a good way to do it too. That's just adding an extra step. But what Tim's talking about is mounting this piece in the chuck. First, you would turn it round. This is just another blank, same thing in case I messed this one up. But turn this around, put a tenon on it, and basically doing the same thing, but then you have your live center side completely open. You might see a little more vibration doing that because it's only held on by a chuck, especially when you get down in here. I like doing it between centers. You can try it both ways. But I'm liking how this is looking. My next step is to lower my speed a little bit, and I got to address my two nubs at the end. When I'm doing that, I'm going to start on the live center side. So with my speed being lower, I'm making the same cuts, but I'm just slowing down the speed or the feed rate of my tool. And these nubs, I want them to stay a little proud. I don't want to make it perfectly true with the sphere surface, because then when I go to break those little nubs off, they might tear out the end grain fiber, and then I'll be left with a little divot where that nub is. So what I mean by that, you'll see here, if you can, my head's not in the way. Just so I don't throw it off the lathe, pretty much, and the faster it's going, being that thin, it might want to break and then fly off the lathe. You could do it faster than this, but this is just a more conservative way of doing it. So same thing over here. Okay, now I'm just gonna put my hand on top and catch it when I cut all the way through the drive center side. Okay. So there's my sphere. It's still attached on the live center side, and see, I left a little bit of a nub there, so when I ripped that off, it didn't completely rip wood out of it. Oops. Yeah. Okay, so I like the shape of it. It's definitely not a perfect sphere, but next step, we're going to go in and show you how to make it a perfect sphere. So I'm going to readjust a little bit here. Oopsies. That's how you dull a tool, is when you jam the edge right into the lathe. But that's okay. I'm not going to be using the skew much now. Okay. All right. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to hold this on the lathe now. This is a live center with a, I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's a different type of live center, but I guess it's an adjustable live center, how you can put different tips on it. So it has a threaded piece on the outside. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. And I've just turned a piece of wood that is fit on that threaded piece, and it's concave on the inside with a hole drilled out of it. And also these come with a point. I take the point out, obviously, just by pushing with a rod through the entire piece. You take the point out. That way the point isn't jutting into my sphere. The point of this chucking method, these are called jam chucks, is to not mark the piece of wood. If you just put it in between your drive and live center, you're going to put a big divot or hole into it. So you don't want to do that. So I'm going to pop out my drive center and put in a chuck. Oops, that's mine. Where's my chuck? There it is. So this is a one-way Talon chuck. It's a smaller version that they make. I like using a smaller one for this. Whoa. And I'm going to put in a jam chuck. This is a piece of aspen. You want to use softwood for this. And it's very small. It's just kind of tapered down. And I have to kind of fix it before I'm able to use it here. So get that nice and tight. And so basically I want this to be similar to this, but it's going to be about half the diameter. Maybe not quite half, but I want it to be concaved enough so that my sphere fits in there right. And the different size of sphere is kind of going to change how you put that in there and hold it. Change the concave shape, that is. So it's not running true right now, which is fine. I can go ahead and make it true. I'm using a bowl gouge here. And you want to use softwood here. It's just going to be a little more forgiving and not mar your piece of wood. So that's about the diameter I want. And I'm going to go ahead and hollow it out. Not hollow, but remove this wood. So you can see I'm kind of at an awkward point here. My back of my handle is up too high. I'm kind of comfortable turning like that, but that's because I had my tool rest higher for when I was using the skew. And I've kind of gotten used to turning like that just so I don't have to move my tool rest as much. But ideally, you should move your tool rest down when you're using a bowl gouge. So I'm more so down here, like this, maybe level versus up like this. And you can get fancy homemade jam chucks or store-bought ones that are kind of the right material, silicone, or I'm not even sure what they are, nylon. So they're more resilient than wood, but I like using this method. You can also get O-rings and put them in. I've seen people do that, O-rings, so that kind of makes it more squishy and kind of grips the wood better. But from here on out, I'm going to just be holding it in between these two pieces. Go ahead and lock my tailstock. And so I was on side grain axis before. That means end grain is on both ends and the piece is in between centers. Now I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees so both my nubs are running straight up and down. And end grain is running straight up and down. Side grain is running left to right. This is kind of a bowl orientation, but this is much more different than turning a bowl because we're kind of limited how we can turn it. So here's kind of the moment of truth when you get this locked in there. You're going to be able to see how far off you were. So get that spinning nice and snug. You don't want to tighten it too much. You just have two pieces of wood holding it. So now I'm looking at my ghost wood, which is looking at the top horizon of the piece. You get to see the gap between the air and the wood as it makes revolutions. I can see my two nubs running up at the highest point, and then there's ghost wood on each side of it. It's running true at the points, but it gets more severe ghost wood, that is, at the top. So how I kind of tackle that is I'm going to use the bowl gouge. Since I'm turning more so into end grain here, I have to be a little more careful. I couldn't use the skew and do the same method I was before. That would really tear out the grain or make it splintery. The skew isn't designed for that. This is more so going to be a shearing cut with the bowl gouge. And it's really important to take light cuts and smooth. So focusing more on the wing of the tool and just kind of making sure I'm really stable. I don't want that vibration to knock me off course. And my goal here is to eliminate that ghost wood and make it run true. Kind of working on one side first before I transfer to the other one. Turn my speed up here a little bit to help me shear through the wood. Oops, you don't want to get too aggressive. It'll either knock it off course in between your jam chucks or make tear out. I don't want to make, it's okay to make tool marks here in the wood, but if I tear out, it's going to be hard to sand out. Okay, so now looking at it, one thing some people do is when they're at that point, before what I just did that, they make a mark in the very center. If I have my pencil, really good at losing stuff, but they make a mark, slow down your speed, and just mark the entirety of the center, and then they make sure that is removed on the entire surface before they switch. But I'm pretty happy with where I'm at now. I can see I've got tool marks all over the place, but I don't have any tear out, which is when the wood kind of gets torn out from where it is. And to get the tear out, you have to sand the entire surface down to the point of that tear out. And that's not something I want to do. So I want to have a smooth surface, but I'm okay with different tool marks and different just kind of colors. I look at the color of the wood. You can see it was being cut over here and not over here right there. But I'm okay with where that's at now, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate it again. But I'm going to rotate it more so like 45 degrees this time and see how it's turning. And I'm going to do that again with the bowl gouge. And that's kind of what you got to do here, is just keep rotating it, changing its axis, and taking a little bit of wood off. It helps if you started close to a sphere. If you had more of an oval or an oblong shape at the beginning of this, it's going to be removing more wood and just a little more tedious. So nice light cuts. Okay, check that out. So kind of take it off the lathe, give it a look over. If it seems like it's proud on two ends, I would go back in and put that so the two ends are facing me, and that'll be what I'm turning. Another thing is when I'm putting this in between these jam chucks, I want that on the drive center focused first, and I want it to be applying pressure straight back into it, perfectly 90 degrees into it. I don't want to be off kilter at all, because that can kind of look like you're not at a sphere, but really it's just not running true. So that's a really important piece to look at. I'll go ahead and do that one more time. I have some ghost wood here. You can also rely on sanding a lot. Sanding will change the shape of the sphere. If you stopped, like where I'm at right now, and just sanded it and then kept rotating it and sanding it and rotating it, it's going to eventually get more spherical. And that's kind of what I'm going to do after this. I'm going to do a little sanding on this so I can add some color to it. And when I'm sanding these, you want to start out at maybe 100 grit, maybe 80 grit. You could even start at 60. If you've got tear out and you've got a lot of sanding to do, you can start at 60 and then lead up to, and go as high as you want, because it really is important to get rid of all those different tool marks. You want it to look like it's a perfect surface. So I've got pretty close to a sphere now. I'm pretty happy with it. And I'm gonna start sanding. I have the dust collection on here. I hope it picks up enough of it. But I'm not gonna sand too much. I won't make it that dusty. If I can get this thing mounted in here. Nope. Oh well. But, Tim, could you grab me a paper towel? Or anybody? Thank you. So I want to mount this with a paper towel on my drive center side because it has the likelihood of, if I'm sanding too hard, it's gonna make this piece burn where the drive center is, and it's gonna leave a big mark there, which I don't want to do. So, yeah. So when I do this, I like to have just a kind of a small square. I don't want a bunch flapping around, kind of getting in my way. So just enough to cover that whole circle. And same thing, I want this to run perfectly true. See how it looks. And see that's not running true. You see how much ghost wood there is? That means I have some work to do. That's probably because of the paper towel. Okay, that looks better. So I've got some 100 grit here. I'm just gonna see if I can do this with one hand. See, that's what I was talking about. I didn't get it tight enough. Think you can hold that? Okay, thanks. All right. And just, you want to start off sanding lightly. You don't want to sand too heavy. Make sure I get the whole surface covered here pretty well. And you don't want to focus on sanding on one axis for too long. You'll change the shape. So that's good for that. I'm going to go ahead and rotate it. Bring your paper towel with you. And I'm going to rotate it about maybe 60 degrees here. Okay, that's good. Okay, and just for the sake of a demo, I know everybody loves to watch me sand, but I'm just going to do this one more time. See, that's what you don't want. You don't want it to stop. By applying too much pressure, you're going to get a mark. And that is where the better jam chucks will come in handy. It won't mark it. It'll grip it better. Okay. So look at your surface. We've got some imperfections, but I'm going to call that good for right now. Thanks, Tim. You can just put it anywhere. Okay, so I'm going to just add a little color to this piece. Give it a little more interest and enhance it. Sometimes people make them out of really interesting wood. This is maple. It doesn't have too much character. But if you're making them out of, a burl or something really cool, maybe color's not the right idea. So, like we kind of talked about before, I'm going to use these are shellac color sticks is what I call them. Just a 1 minute rundown on what this is. It's button lac, which is usually used for French polishing. I buy that and I melt it down using a heat gun, and then I add mica powdered pigment. So it's like a powder. I'm just on a table melting it together, and I get it really thoroughly mixed and get a bunch of powder in there. The more, the better usually. The more pigment that you get into it, the better, more bright, and the better it's going to show up, the more opaque it is. And how I apply this is through friction on the lathe. So this stuff is really reactive to heat usually, and friction is going to put this onto the piece of wood, and then I'm going to use a palm leaf. So this is really the only thing I've been lucky with that activates it. The benefit of this color over any other way to color wood is like it's adding finish and color at the same time. So it's the fastest way I've found to add a high gloss finish to wood turnings. And just recently I've kind of discovered this, that by using these Sharpie paint markers as an undercoat and then doing this color on top of it, it makes it a little easier to apply it all. Sometimes the trick with this is it's not easy to apply. It can look globby or it can look just not perfect on the wood. If you apply an undercoat of this and put this color on top of it, it's much easier to do. So I'm just going to start off and put a little stripe here slowly. Another thing is I want to find, this is running pretty true right now. With this color at least, you want your piece to be running as true as possible. You don't want it to be bouncing at all. So keep moving your sphere until you find it to run the truest way as possible. And if you're going to use this color, that's the way to do it. So I just did like a red color. This is more of a kind of an orangish red I'll put on top of it. I need more speed. Put this on. I'm at about 1300 RPMs. And I'm just gonna hold it on there, get it hot enough to melt on the surface. Try to cover the entire piece that I did. It's kind of flying off there at me. Sometimes it does that, usually it doesn't. And I'm gonna get my palm leaf. I've got 2 layers here. And I'm at about 1500 RPMs for this too. And what I do is I come over the top of it with my other hand. I come on the bottom with the palm leaf. Get the dust off my hand, and my top hand kind of helps blend it in and smooth it as this heats it up, so my top hand can make it glass-like smooth. And what creates the chatoyancy here, the shininess, is making it so smooth. If it's not smooth, it's not going to be shiny. So I kind of heat it up with this, make it malleable, and then switch over to my top hand and smooth it out. Okay, shut it off. Take a look at it. Looks pretty good. It's solid. My edges are a little wavy, not perfect. So I'm going to do another color right next to it. Does anyone have any color recommendations with this color? No? Anybody? All right, I'll do yellow.
I wouldn't do yellow.
Oh, shoot. Can't do yellow. Getting this. I'll do blue. How about America?
Blue would be great.
Blue's great. All right. Daryl, you usually have some color recommendations for me. All right. This might end up looking like a Pokemon ball or something, but. And then, so just going off this, you don't have to do the exact same color as the base coat. I'm gonna put maybe a green actually on top of the blue and see how that turns out. Make sure I've got the right color. Speed back up. Oops. Okay, that's enough.
When you're doing that right next to the other color,
Yeah.
does it like you can kind of run into the other
You can,
color?
yeah, see, so.
You don't have to have a defined line necessarily.
Yeah, you got to be a little careful. That's why in my pieces, like, I like to make a distinct shape, one per color, and then make a line in between them to kind of define them. And that helps. That's kind of hiding my imperfections, honestly. See here, I've got a little bit of a gap in between the colors showing up white. You can see that. And obviously my edges aren't very good, but I'll see how I can address that.
With your salt shaker things that you're
Yeah.
doing, I noticed you took your skew right
Yeah.
in between the colors and just kind of put a small little groove in there to get your
Yeah, I'll go ahead and
separation.
I'll do that right after this. The skew really can help you with or a point tool basically is what you're using the skew for. And it can really clean up your edges here. Another reason why you want this to be running as true as possible, if you try that and it's not running true, it's not going to turn out very good. So see when I apply that, it's not covering my entire base coat yellow, but I'm okay with that because I can kind of move it around when I go to the palm leaf. See, I can cover that. What's that? Palm leaf. Other than a palm tree. I bought this. I bought a roll of it on the line. Gosh, I can't remember the name of the website. I think it's like something about a reef. If you find me later, I'll send you a link. But I used to buy them from Hobby Lobby, and that never worked out very good. This stuff is much more durable. It's actually it's not a palm. It's a different plant. But okay, so just looking at this over.
Yeah, the Hobby Lobby turned out to be too brittle.
Yeah. I was buying like a fan of palm leaves from Hobby Lobby, and that never really worked. Did you see some there? I got a pretty cheap source for these. Okay, so I just moved that over a little bit because I had too big of a gap. Let's just look at what we're doing here. So it's not perfect, but let's see if we can fix it. Bring my tool rest back up. Switching to the skew, I use the long point. When I'm doing this, I make sure the skew is flat on the tool rest. And I'd rather be lower on the piece of wood than up higher. I want to be either perpendicular to it or just slightly below that. And I'm going to come in here at the edge. Nice, slow and steady. Try to clean that up and then move in between the colors. Switching sides. And here I actually am lifting off to the corner of the skew versus being flat. It's kind of giving me a better angle. Nice and slow. Clean off my tool so I can see it. Okay. Another thing is I go into like a V-cut motion here and go back into those grooves. Gives it a little more definition at the bottom of it. Okay, so when I did that, I think it kind of messed up my corners just by feeling it. I can see that they raised up a little bit, so they're a little bit of a jagged edge. So I'll go back to the palm leaf and try to fix that just by smoothing it out. Okay, looks good. I'll go ahead and pop this off the lathe. Looking at my mark here, or seeing if there is a mark, I did good. That paper towel did its job. There's no real mark there. I can see a lot of sanding marks. I didn't spend as much time on that as I should have. But you could go back and hand sand this and then apply finish. You can really, this coloring method, if you're more interested in it, you can talk to me about it, but you can put polyurethane, lacquer, shellac on top of it. There's a few things I found that didn't work, but most things work on top of it. So, what time is it? 8:30? About that time? Yeah. I could try to turn that base, but I think everybody wants to be done. That's all right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Yeah.